Hey folks, Geoff Hetherington, happy to be back after my fourth and hopefully final major surgery in the last couple of weeks. Today I'm going to be talking about positioning and profile. These are two very important things. As usual, no rainbows, no unicorns. The stuff I'm going to be talking about and giving you today is stuff you can take out, take notes today, but certainly look at the replay, but you can use it this afternoon. You don't have to wait to use anything on here. All right, who am I? Look, I'm called the Profitability Coach, amongst other things. I founded the Elite Business Institute and a community called North of 40, which is launching officially in the latter part of October. I'm a business consultant, advisor, mentor, but really I teach more than I do anything else. I'm a certified advisory board chair. There's only 45 of us in the country. I'm an active governing board chair. I serve on the board of my local Bendigo Community Bank. I've won a couple of awards for marketing. I do some speaking. I'm an author, 30 plus years C-suite executive here and in Southeast Asia. And I'm also a business continuity planning expert, all of which is said, A, to remind you that I'm still around, but B, not to impress you, but just to let you know you're in good hands. So why does positioning matter more than ever? Positioning matters more than ever now because we're existing in a million channel world where, quite frankly, there is a huge rise of mediocrity because everyone's using AI, and they're not using AI as an adjunct to their business. They're trying to use it to replace themselves, and that doesn't always work out well. But there is an awful lot of noise out there, and unless you're positioned properly, you cannot cut through the noise. You just become someone who falls by the wayside. So how to do things is largely commoditized now. I mean, it's been commoditized for a while. The smart people have been learning how to do things from YouTube for quite a number of years. But now, of course, with ChatGPT and the rest of them, Kling, etc., it's even easier than it was before to at least click a few keys on your keyboard and get some information on how to do things. But what isn't commoditized is who. It's the person whose experience that delivers to you. It is the person whose experience is the lens that they look at things through and can help you. So how to do things is largely commoditized, but how without experience to back it up, to back up the teaching, means it's a much poorer thing. Remember, because we want to cut through the million channels, people will buy you before they buy how you do things. People think how's easy to set up, and it is. But your positioning should showcase your identity. Now, I happen to believe your identity online should be pretty close to who you are offline, but you can, of course, go ahead and create an entirely different identity if you want to. The basics, well, we start here. The thing is, your business, your products, your service, the people you deal with, all these things are literally interconnected. They're probably more interconnected than they ever have been. The rise in social media over the last 15 years has seen your personality, who you are, what you do, what you like to eat, where you like to go, all that sort of stuff has become part of the process that people use to decide if they want to work with you, if they want to take advantage of you, your products, your services, and help them fix their business. So the first thing you really have to do is you've got to solidly define your niche. Now, the old way of doing niches was we looked at demographics. That's like, where do people live? How much money do they make in their household? What's their title? Which company they work for? How old are they? What's their gender? That's demographics. Then we looked at psychographics. What's their personality like? What's their opinions? Do they like Trump? Do they hate Trump? What interests and hobbies have they got? Are they a Labor voter? Are they a Liberal voter? That was the old way. And this stuff's still important, but it's not the place to start. The place to start is by the problem that you solve or the pain you remove for your chosen clients. What is it that you're good at that people will pay for that removes a problem or pain from their lives? In other words, the four broad types of pain that people have is they have financial pains, that's to do with money. They've got productivity pain, they'd like to do things quicker and easier. They've got a process pain, they're really getting lost in what they're doing, and they need support or help. Now, they're very business focused, but as you'll see as we move forward, there's only really three major markets that you want to be playing in. So a niche market, an ideal niche market for any of us, should be something that ties our interests, our goals, and our experience to a set group of people who've got a set problem or pain to resolve. In other words, a market need. So if you choose a niche, you can basically think of it this way. I help unique avatar, that's your client, solve a specific problem in a unique way that reverses their biggest objection. And the biggest objection normally is that's too expensive, I don't want to pay for it, I can learn it from YouTube, or ChatGPT will help me. If you're niching properly, if you're addressing someone's problem or pain correctly, you'd be able to say, I help the unique avatar solve their problem in a unique way. This is important. Now, you need to decide your currency. And when I say currency, I don't mean euros or American dollars or the yen or the Aussie dollar. I'm talking about these. These are the three main currencies, and pretty much they encapsulate every market that there is. There's the wealth, there's health, and there's relationships. And within those currencies or markets, if you like, there's lots of sub-currencies. So if you're in the wealth area, you can talk about finance, you can talk about investing, you can talk about real estate, you can talk about sales. If you're in health, it's about diet, nutrition, strength training, weight loss, those sorts of things. Relationships, marriage advice, dating advice, love advice, all that sort of stuff. But essentially, you've got three major markets with a lot of sub-markets underneath them. And what you need to do to stand out and cut through the million channels that we're involved in is look at those three markets, see which one is the one that you want to work in, and what sub-market can you work in. And from that sub-market, you'll then find a niche and then your own one yourself. Here's an idea, right? Time management is a pretty good market, and that probably lies somewhere in there with money, all right? Time management for sales professionals is a nice category. Time management for outbound B2B sales is an even better category. Time management for outbound B2B healthcare CRM sales professionals is a beautiful niche. And look what happens with how much you can charge for your services. The more granular you get, the more specific in the problem that you solve or the pain you remove, the more money you can charge. Simple as that. So you position best on pain points. So one thing to do is if you understand your clientele, the people you want to work with, you understand your interests and your experience, make a list of the people you want to work with. What pain do they suffer? That's one that you can solve. Make a list of them. Each buyer, you create a thing called a persona or an avatar, depending on whatever you want to do. But everyone's got a few pain points. So think along the surface level. So examples, if someone's an overwhelmed freelancer, they're juggling admin, marketing, and delivery. That would stand true for tradies, which Lana helps with. They're a budget conscious mum. They're wondering how the hell can I feed people without feeling guilty about putting pasta on the dinner table every single night. And if they're a new online coach, well, they get stuck on tech and they're not sure how to attract leads. So you write down one or two pain points per persona. These are the things that become your hooks when you're starting to talk to people. Then what you have to do is take your product or service and frame it as the relief, as the solution to that problem or pain. So for each pain point you've got, write down a feature or benefit, preferably a benefit because people buy emotionally rather than logically, to your product or service. Format it this way, tired of whatever the pain is. That's exactly why we built this product or this service. It helps you by doing X, right? An example, tired of wasting hours creating content that gets ignored. That's why we built Caption King. It gives you scroll stopping captions in 10 minutes flat. Just an example. Try and use their words, not yours. There's nothing worse than reading copy or talking to someone about a problem you're seeking to solve and their language is entirely different from you. I have friends who are university professors and they wonder why they're not getting employed as speakers on the public speaking circuit. It's because they don't speak like ordinary people. It's like a lot of coaches. I mean, I could talk to you on the asymmetrical disposition of financial assets if you want me to, but that would be inappropriate because it's not right for the clientele I'm talking to. So try and speak in their language. Type into Google what they say. Try and find out that way. So avoid saying, we'll optimize your workflow with our dynamic content planner, and say things like, stop feeling stuck. Plan a week of content in under 30 minutes. The more relatable you are, the more impressive you're seen, the more likely people will listen to you. And step 4 is use pains in your headlines, your subheads, and your call to actions. Your copy should lead with the problem they care most about, not your features and not your tech specs. They're the very last thing to talk about. It should be problem solution. The solution should be presented as a benefit to working with you, using your product or using your service. So don't say introducing a new scheduling tool, say no more late night scheduling your posts ever. There's a real benefit there. So here's a question for you. Who are you best suited to serve? With your skills, your experience, your interests, and problems you know you can solve, who are you best suited to serve? The next step in positioning yourself properly, well, you've got your niche nailed and you've gone market, sub-market, category to niche. Now you've got your niche nailed. Now you've gone through the pain points of that niche, so you're starting to understand how to talk to people. You need to create a category of one. It's very easy, to call ourselves, people put themselves in boxes, and they do it quite a lot when we're doing things like networking. The number of times I go to networking things and someone goes, hi, my name's Bob, I'm an accountant, bang, puts them straight in the box. They confuse what they do for a living with who they are or the service they provide. So you need to try and create a category of one so you stand out in that million dollar world. So here's a category of one. You could say I'm a consultant. That's pretty boring. I'm a business consultant. Well, that helps. Actually, I'm a finance consultant. Actually, I consult in using AI in finance. So I'm an AI consultant for lender finance departments. I'm an AI consultant for lenders financing apartments. And I'm an AI consultant for penthouse lenders. So you can see how by niching down who you are and what you do, it gets down to more specific problems that you solve, which means you're more likely to cut through the million channels we're all trying to exist in. So if you're going to invent your category, define it. What's the problem and the solution? What does their new future look like? What are the boundaries that's going to stop them doing things? What vocabulary do you need to use? How are you different from other people, and what allies have you got? If you're going to establish it, tell the story about the category. If you're doing AI for lenders in penthouses, you talk about how it makes the application process quicker, how more quickly you can deliver the papers, etc., etc. Have a launch event about it, build a community around it, look at advertising, have a continuous cadence, which is another way of saying be consistent, post regularly, post on the same time, talk about it, and own it by being the visionary. Talk about the problems and where you see it going. Think about your category over the companies that you deal with. Maybe you host a conference, hold a podcast, help you grow the fastest. The other thing you do is you need to think about building a world. The core components of world building are simply this. Who are the people that inhabit your world? Who are the characters in it? What language or distinguishing language or what unique words do you use to describe your world? What are the locations and environments that your world exists in? What storylines can you tell to exist to illustrate a point? And what memes do you have? What recurring bon mots or amusements do you have? So if you look at my world, right, the core components of my world are characters, my much better half. Those of you who know me know I always refer to Lynn as my much better half.
I agree.
I often talk about the guitar playing doctor when I'm talking to people about follow your passion and you'll never have to work again, which is BS. Here's what I talk. Sometimes I talk about my dog, Knox, the furry doorbell, which drives me crazy. I also talk about the executive. Actually, it's the dumb executive, but I didn't want to put it in the slide. All right. My language, I talk about midlife mavericks. I talk about having a lifestyle business, using a 5x5, taking selfies, squeezing your week and using a to-don't list. All things pretty much unique to me. Places I'll talk about are the Central Coast or Indonesia or Sydney or clients in Portugal or people I've worked with in Germany or the USA. My storylines are I'm a corporate escapee. I escaped nearly 13 years ago from a corporate job, right? I talk about the 360-degree review that I underwent when I was at Vodafone and how that stopped me being an absolute dick and learned to improve my EQ. But I talk about that. I talk about now 4 major surgeries in 10 months. Not many people have done that, but I've learned some important lessons about me and the world during that. I talk about my general's bigger than your general, which is how we used to play things in Indonesia. If you were having problems doing business, you had to bring your general out and say he's bigger than your general. I've got memes. I talk about work-life balance is BS. I talk about saddling up and don't settling. I talk about oat milk, which is an absolute waste of time and why would anyone have it? I talk about it's never too late. So there's my world. I've got all the components there, and you'll see more of this in the coming months. But think about how can you build your world with your language, with your own characters, your stories, your own memes. This will help you stand out from other people. Of course, you can be clever and you can be contrarian. Believe it or not, engine is a gin. It's not oil, it's a gin. It's an Italian organic gin, and it is selling unbelievably well. But what they did to stand out in a very crowded marketplace was packaged it up that way. Now, if you've got a physical product that you can package up in a way that's smart or different, by all means do it. I don't know how sustainable that is. I mean, if the gin in there is crap, it's not going to last very well. But if it's a good quality gin, it might go. But initially, they're going to sell an awful lot of it for the novelty effect. And you can use novelty or being contrarian or being clever to cut through the noise of everyone else to stand out. So I think that's a great example. Next thing is you've got to get exposed. You have to be exposed in your marketplace. How do you implement that? A lot of stuff I've talked about now is strategic and a bit of tactical, but once you've got your positioning and who you are and you've created your world and you've got your niche and your pain points, then what you need to do is you need to be talking about these things using the language on your website homepage, on your social media bios. Email signatures should reflect it. Your marketing materials and assets should. When you're having a sales conversation, you should be making sure you're using these things, and when you're creating content. What I've just given you in the preceding 30 slides is literally what you need to do to create your assets moving forward for your business. So if you want to get your message out, create a category of one. Choose to work on no more than 3 social media platforms. For me, it's LinkedIn, it's Instagram, and increasingly it's YouTube. Not sure what it's right for you, but find the right ones. Do networking. Groups like Be Connected World are incredibly important. The fact it's got an open directory is important. Yet I see very few people are actually using it to drive their business, or what they're putting up there is so generic it sounds like 1,000 other people doing the same job as them, right? Another opportunity to Be Connected World is the radio. 60 seconds on radio. I can't remember jail talk after I finished talking about how many listeners you get. You've got the opportunity to have a 60-second ad on the radio that gets played again and again, but hardly anyone amongst the members have done it. But it's a great way to get you and your message out once you've decided on your message. Maybe you can start your own podcast, or you can guest on someone else's. You can write a book. It's one of the best ways to actually stand out in the crowd. You can start a blog. You can blog on your own, or you can guest blog if you want to. Approach people who have your customers but are not a competitor to you and blog with them. You can do faced videos, which is the sort of stuff you see me doing on Instagram. It's me, it's my face. Or you can do non-faced, which a lot of people do, where they don't appear, but there's just writing and music. You can run webinars, you can run conferences, you can do speaking. You could talk about OPA, which is other people's audiences. Again, the key here is figuring out which people, which businesses have got your clientele but don't compete with you, and then talk to them about how you can work together, their clients with yours. And most important of all, be consistent. I see people get excited and they go hell for leather for 3 weeks and they're posting every day on 16 different social platforms, and they run out of puff and they don't do anything for 6 months. And then they go, oh, social media doesn't work. Not true. You've got to work. And it's easy enough to find out how often you should be posting on LinkedIn if that's your thing, or Instagram. There's 2 ends to it. There's always a spectrum. You've got a lot of people there say, oh, you've got to be on Instagram 3 times a day. Crap, that's not true. But you can find out and find something that works for you. Even if you're only going on something once a week, so long as you do it once a week and your language is right and it's cutting through, you will eventually start growing your thing. So look, it's a complicated issue. It's a complicated thing to look at. So making sense of it all can seem a lot. So you should watch the replay of this. You should take notes from that. But if you'd like a hand, as always, let's have a chat. It's free. I'm happy to spend 30 minutes with you talking about your business. If you want to focus on how to position your businesses as opposed to how to generate sales or any of the other things we talk about, please write down the the URL up there for my diary, or just take a snapshot of the QR code. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Thank you very much.